Welcome to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Established in 2016, the Fintech Times is a global multimedia news outlet centered around the world's first leading fintech newspaper. We report on the latest and brightest ideas from the fintech world. Follow the conversation using hashtag TFD News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times. Hello, and welcome back to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. It's been a little while since I've been on the podcast, so I'm thrilled to be back. And I'm here, of course, with the wonderful Tom. How are you doing today, Tom?
I am very good. It's lovely to have you back. We've definitely been missing you for the last couple of weeks. We've been struggling on through how does Polly do this? And we've been trying to make it work. So it's good to have you back. And obviously, we're now missing Francis, and we will be for the next, I think, 3 weeks. So like I feel like I'm the only constant at the moment. I'm always like, hopefully we're gonna get everyone back soon together, but it doesn't seem to be happening. But no, it's been a crazy busy week. I mean, I was off for a few days. As I said, Francis is now off. Dubai. Claire's been busy in Dubai, and yeah, it's just been a crazy week, and we're trying to fit everything in with no one being around at the same time. But it's good to just come back to normality, come back to the podcast, and back to just chilling and talking about the recent news.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always feel that this time of year is just always crazy busy. It's like we have the mega sort of time in sort of around April where everything kicks, April to sort of June. And then as soon as you kind of get into October, November, it kicks off again because everyone's trying to get stuff done before Christmas. So yeah, it's always a super busy time for sure. But at least we're here to talk about fintech. What are you going to be talking about this week?
So today I'm going to be talking about a company which is introducing biometric re-authentication in a move to stamp out fraud attacks, and just be trying to discuss a little bit about our thoughts on biometric re-authentication overall.
Awesome stuff. And I am going to be looking at mobile payments in the Nordics and how different attitudes and preferences are coming in that region. So, I mean, Tom, I'll let you go first. Why not? Let's talk about fraud and biometric re-authentication.
Absolutely. So the reason I picked this in the first place is because Anna, which is the business and tax app, is currently implementing re-authentication to ensure customers can rest easy knowing that the organization is looking out for them continuously to ensure their data is safe. And now if someone tries to access an Anna account from a new device, a biometric re-authentication notification will appear, prompting the user to submit some sort of identity verification, usually a selfie. And basically, if it cannot make a match with the data it has on hand, then this account will be suspended in a move to try and stop fraudsters from gaining access to accounts that they shouldn't do. So to further boost security, Anna's also adding ongoing random biometric authentication checks that require a customer selfie. So this is basically to try and combat, when fraudsters have scammed their way into someone's account, whether they've snatched an unlocked phone or they're using a mule account to launder money. It will mean that they can, be immediately locked out of the account as soon as this random check has been completed and proves they're not who they say they are. And Levin Lee, however you pronounce it, I hope I've done a good job there, who's Anna's chief compliance officer, explained that there's no friction at all for regular customers. It's just a quick selfie, which we're all used to doing. And the reason I kind of picked this overall is because it relates quite nicely with a recent webinar that we actually hosted at the Fintech Times. It was a live webinar which was looking into sort of the myths surrounding re-authentication and specifically biometric re-authentication. And I remember, one sort of comment that they discussed was, would customers or users be sick of having to re-authenticate their face every time they open an app? And I think what the experts on the panel explained is that this is something that people are actually already completely used to. I think the majority of people now have a biometric check every single time they pick up their phone for a start. And I think some kind of worry that are people going to get sick of it if they have to re-authenticate every single time they switch an app, they open a new app, they open a new site, whatever the case may be. But for me, I feel like while it might add the smallest amount of friction to the process, I feel like most people are more than happy with that because it's adding to their security of their accounts or funds or crypto or whatever it may be. And with that, really, I wanted to bring you in and just see what you would think about this. Is biometric authentication something that you think would eventually become annoying or put you off using apps or doing certain things, or are you more than happy to see an increase in biometric re-authentication. Every time you open the apps, random authentication checks, for the sake of that security. I just wanted to get your viewpoint on that.
Yeah, I think it's actually really interesting because, like you say, I don't think it's any different to kind of what happens now. Like, if I think of sort of going through the process of, I don't know, for example, making like a money transfer on my banking app on my phone. Like, you're right, I have to do a biometric, I have to do Face ID to open my phone, I have to click on the banking app, and then I'll probably have to do Face ID again. And then when I make the transfer to like confirm the transfer, I'll probably have to do Face ID again. So actually, I don't think, like you say, I think this is something that people are already used to. I don't think actually it is any different to kind of how people navigate phones and sort of mobile banking at the moment. I guess the only difference maybe is I guess the only difference maybe is how it's being authenticated. Like, if you have to take a quick selfie, does that then shoot off to someone or like an AI program that has to or identify it sort of like manually or automatically, or whatever? Like, is that taking time, or is it just like Face ID where your phone is doing all the work for you? I guess that's the only thing what maybe it would take a little bit of time, like when you're opening a new bank account and you have to send a video being like, my name is Polly and I want to open a bank account, like whether that's some friction there. But I mean, yeah, to me it just sounds like stuff that everyone is already doing. And I think, it's great to see, I guess, a push to security, especially when it comes to sort of authorized push payment fraud, with the new regulator rules coming for that. And I think I don't really see how it's any different to what's happening now, unless it is popping up every like 10 minutes or something like that when you're using a banking app. And I think it's also really interesting it talking about sort of like phone snatchers and sort of fraudsters accessing your accounts that way. And it would be really interesting to know, because I think obviously like we've literally just said, pretty much everyone's phone has like a passcode or Face ID on it, and I know a passcode is pretty easy to like get through if you know what you're doing, but is surely there's going to be an element of like someone snatching your phone is going to still find it quite difficult to get into a banking app, or maybe that's me being naive about how clever people are at breaking into phone security. I don't know. But yeah, I think this is very much just by the by now. This is what people expect. People want to see security. People want to be, they want to trust in the apps that they're using. Because I still know quite a few people who won't use a banking app because they don't think it's safe, which, whatever. So yeah, it's very interesting. But I think this is by the by what people are used to. So I don't think this is going to be a problem as we sort of move forward in like customer friction and customer preferences and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree actually, and I think I feel it's really easy for us, especially to say that, because in the UK it's kind of become almost the standard, especially for banking apps. It's regardless who you bank with, you're going to have this biometric re-authentication. But one of the things that stood out to me that I think is quite easy to forget as well, when we did the live webinar about this kind of topic, was the fact that one of the panelists has a bank account in Canada, and it's still a case of you have to input so you get every time he logs in, he gets a notification that to check he's himself, but then he said it gives him the option to actually, I don't have access to my mobile right now, so I'd rather get a text or an email, whatever. And he said that just gives fraudsters another opportunity to get in. And I think it's interesting that in other places, other regions of the world outside of the UK, even developed places, with sort of innovative products like Canada, they still haven't necessarily completely embraced it and implemented this technology yet. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly it's implemented across the globe, because like you said, it's something that we're so used to now. I mean, every time basically I do a payment, I think 95% of my payments are using the Apple Wallet, and then every single payment I do on that, it does a biometric re-authentication. And I think there's something I don't even think about. It's not even a conscious part of my brain anymore. I'm not thinking, it's going to check my face. I just kind of subconsciously hold the phone at the right angle, and it does it in a couple of seconds, and then I make my payment. And it's not even something you think about anymore. I think if that's the way all biometric re-authentication is headed, like you said, if it is just the same process using Face ID on your phone, then I don't see any reason why anyone would have an issue with that. And I think it's definitely a step in the right direction to keeping fraudsters out of accounts that aren't theirs. But with that, I think it'd be interesting to see how other countries and other regions do kind of implement it. And I think all in all, it's just a very, very positive change to improve security across not only financial services, but whatever the case may be. But with that, I think we've tied that up quite nicely. So why don't we move over to your article now, Polly?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is kind of, a bit of a sidestep, really, because we're still talking about mobile payments in my piece. So essentially, a new report has detailed the payment habits of consumers in the Nordic countries, published by Nets, part of the European paytech Netsy Group. And essentially, it has revealed that while card payments dominate the payment landscape, mobile payments are on the rise. So the survey basically sort of explored different attitudes towards the payments market and sort of the preferences that consumers have right now, and also kind of about the future and try to forecast sort of what's coming next within the space. So basically, they found that 76% of Nordic consumers use some form of mobile payment in physical sales locations, with a 12% of Nordic consumers saying and then 12% of Nordic consumers only pay with their mobile phone, citing no need for a physical wallet at all, with 30% of consumers never using cash. So I just thought this was a really interesting thing. And I think saying those numbers out loud, there is no surprise there, right? We all know that kind of mobile payments is coming, really getting more popular with, Apple Pay, Google Pay, things like that. But I think it's really interesting to see sort of how it has sort of evolving, especially in sort of differing countries and differing regions. So in 2022, mobile payments had pushed cash payments into third place among Nordic consumers' most preferred payment methods. And then so this has obviously kind of become a sort of a bit of a battle between Apple and Google and card schemes like MasterCard and Visa trying to get that top spot between mobile payments and card payments. And there's sort of a lot of things going on, but Apple Pay is super popular in Denmark, more popular than mobile pay. And in Sweden, Apple Pay is almost on par with the local mobile payment method, Swish. So I thought this was just a really interesting thing to talk about, because we talk about, as we were just saying a moment ago, consumer preferences and things like that, and how important it is to cater to different consumers. So knowing that most of the people that live in Nordic countries like paying with their phone, I think is going to tie in a lot to what fintechs might do in that region and how fintechs might move into the future of the industry. And I think a lot of that, again, just comes back to this idea of consumer choice and trying to get that consumer loyalty, because a lot of the time, if you're not offering what a consumer wants, then they'll just go and find somewhere else. We're in a very saturated market for everything, and this is across industries now. So if a consumer doesn't like buying something from you, they'll just go and buy it from someone else, because there's always someone else to buy it from. And 63% of consumers in the Nordics said that they have cancelled a purchase due to a merchant not accepting their preferred payment method. So as you can imagine, that is super crucial, especially when you consider 54% of Nordic merchants saying that they do not currently accept mobile payment methods. Obviously, there's a bit of a gap there between consumer demand and merchant provision, which is going to cause problems and ultimately lead to customers going elsewhere. So you can kind of see how all this research makes sense, even though it's nothing new and it's nothing that we haven't heard before. We all know that everything's going digital and everyone is sort of leaving behind cash in a lot of ways. But at the same time, knowing exactly what your customers want and how to keep them loyal is super important. So, it'd be great to get your opinion on this, Tom. Do you think that, I guess in a two-pronged attack, do you think that sort of digital payments and mobile payments are really becoming the norm, and we're going to see a lot more use of them in the future, maybe to the point where we don't even use cards anymore? And also, how important do you think that sort of getting these consumer preferences right from a merchant perspective is to sort of, operations and actually being successful?
Yeah, well, to the first point, I think for me especially, sometimes when I see the stats, I'm almost surprised that mobile payments don't actually have a larger sort of percentage of use. I think you often see, cards are still top. And it almost surprises me, because ever since I started using Apple Pay, which was, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 years ago now, ever since then I've been well, why would I use a card when I've got a more convenient option on my phone, and I can just, I'm always going to have my phone on me, whereas I don't always have my wallet or my card on me. And it's just a case of, this is just my standard now. And I'm almost surprised that that everyone hasn't kind of adopted that approach. And you know, I definitely see why people still use their cards. People like, as when you're used to something, you want to keep doing it, and people don't see a reason to switch from their card payments because they're not seeing any reason to do so. They're not thinking, oh well, my card payment isn't giving me any problems, so I might as well stick with it. But part of me does think once more and more people do make that switch and think, oh, I'll just try the payments on my phone. I think it will be a very easy transition to only using your phone, and I think that's a trend that I expect to see more and more. And like I said, I'm almost surprised that it hasn't happened faster and across more regions quicker. So yeah, I think it'll be an interesting thing. But for me personally, just knowing how sort of my lifestyle is and the way I do payments, I almost expect that to become the norm. And yeah, and especially surprised by the stat that not all of 54% of these Nordic merchants don't currently accept these mobile payment methods. I think that's just a huge missed opportunity. I think as these stats grow, and this survey suggests that those stats definitely will continue growing, it's just how many customers are you losing out on by not offering these preferred payment methods. And obviously, as the article explains, it's almost half of consumers in Norway and Sweden are using or are never using cash, and it just means that these companies are basically excluding half of the people in these countries from using their business and paying the money. And I think that's a huge missed opportunity. And I think despite the fact that I think Norway, Norwegian legislation requires businesses to accept cash payments, and yet even so, it's just over half of consumers there are not using cash payments at all. And I think it's very important to note that while we've often spoke about the importance of access to cash, is that even if you do offer that and you make sure that it's legally required that every business accepts cash, we're just almost it's almost a guarantee at this point that the numbers of cash users is just going to dwindle and get less and less and less. And while I do still think it's important that everyone offers that option, I think people are just gradually going to move over to digital only payments and mobile payments. And I think once that happens, any company that isn't offering that is surely going to encounter some real issues. So yeah, I do think that's really important.
Yeah, I think you've sort of hit the nail on the head there with everything you've just said. And I think I do share your surprise in a lot of ways when it comes to thinking that more people should be taking on mobile payments. Because I mean, like, there's so many. My husband, for example, he does not use mobile payments whatsoever. He is a wallet man, and every single thing comes out like he gets his wallet out. Whereas me, I just use my phone. I don't know where my purse is. Like, I genuinely could not tell you where it is, which is a problem. But who? Nah. And so I think it's really one of those things that's really interesting when we think about kind of how people pay. And it'd be interesting to know, I think, the divide as well between maybe generationally, do sort of more of the older generations feel like a bit more reluctant to sort of use their phone for a lot of things. But then obviously I like we've said before, like, just because you're older doesn't mean you don't know how to use technology. So I don't know how much like salt that would have. But I think it's just a very interesting thing. And I think you're absolutely right in that you've really got to offer what people want. And if merchants aren't offering the ways to pay that people want to pay, then like I said, they're just going to go elsewhere. So I think it's really important to think about consumer preference. I think it's really important to be thinking about consumer preferences when it comes to being a merchant. But I also think it's really important to think about consumer preferences when it comes to, being a fintech or a financial company operating in that area, because I think that is going to be the key to sort of you coming up with exciting new products and solutions and things like that. Like, for the however many people who aren't using mobile payments, maybe you can make the solution that's going to sway them. Maybe you can make the product that allows the people who aren't using mobile payments to sort of, change their minds and actually use it. And I think that's what's really exciting about fintech, is that you can find a hole, you can find a gap, and you can fill that demand. Or not necessarily a demand, I guess, but that you can fill that place where something isn't and, make a difference. So, yeah, I think it's really interesting. And mobile payments is always just going to be relevant. So, yeah, really exciting. But anyway, we've wrapped that up quite nicely. And I think that brings us to the end of our discussion this week. Thank you so much, Tom, for bringing that article. I think we had a nice little pair today. And if you want to hear any more about any of the thing we've talked about today, head over to fintechtimes.com where there's plenty more news and insights over there. But super quickly, we will move on to what I learned this week. So each week we are learning so much new stuff about the fintech industry, being on the Fintech Times editorial team, that we wanted to share that with our listeners. So Tom, what have you learned this week?
This week, I learned that the relationship between fintechs and agency banking partners appears to be worsening over time, with fintechs being less and less satisfied with the services they receive through these partnerships. And that's according to new research by Clearbank.
Very nice. And I've learned that Currys has launched a new FlexPay credit offering, as its credit customers are shown to be the happiest through their research, and they've also been shown to buy more and more likely to return and shop again. So I thought that was super interesting. But anyway, Tom, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been great to chat to you. Hopefully very soon, once Francis is back, we'll get the whole gang together. But for now, I will catch you on the next one.
Indeed. See you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Don't miss next week's episode and continue the conversation using #TFT News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times.